Hello, welcome back to I Say Are Wrong, and today I'm going to be talking about my worst books of 2021. So, like I said before in my last video, 2021 was absolutely wild in terms of books for me. I had some really good ones and some really bad ones. I only had 6 one-star books this year. I've been a little bit more cautious about giving people 1 stars because I'm reserving that for books that I absolutely cannot stand to even talk about or read or what kind of thing. And that's what I'm going to be kind of talking about today. So first off the bat, I'm going to be talking about the 3 classics that I didn't like. So I tried to kind of read a bit more of like kind of classic literature from around the world. And on the whole, I've kind of found them okay. I've liked a couple of good ones. But there have been quite a few which I just did not like whatsoever. And the first one that I'm going to be talking about today is Lady Chatterley's Lover by D.H. Lawrence. Now, if anybody knows me, they know that I am not a fan of romance books or kind of those kind of smutty books. Nah, I'm just not into that kind of thing. And this book is essentially one long, huge Wattpad fanfic. That's the best way I can use to describe it. The it is I can see how this book changed, kind of was very impactful and changed literature and had the whole court proceedings, and I can respect it for that and respect it for kind of liberating a bit of the kind of sexuality of people throughout the world, especially women. But judging it as a book on its own, I really hated it. I just didn't like the main characters. I hated all of them. I hated what they were doing, and I found myself, even about a couple of chapters in, going, God, these people are all snobs, and I hate them. And that is basically the gist of why I didn't like this book in the slightest. The characters weren't even unlikable in a likable way. Like, see, there are quite a lot of characters that are unlikable, but I like them anyway. No, these characters were just bad. They were just not nice. So essentially, if you don't know what this is about, it's about a woman who is married to a man. This man was injured in World War One, and therefore can't have kids or can't have sex with her. So she goes to the groundskeeper and she seduces him, and then they have an affair, and that is the story. Yeah, I'm not a fan. Nah, not at all. So that was my first of the classics I didn't like. Next up was We by Zamyatin. I can't actually pronounce his name. Yevgeny Zamyatin. He was a Russian kind of novelist who he wrote a lot of satirical and critical works of the Soviet Union, and because of that, he spent the last few years exiled in Paris. Once again, I can see that the history behind this book I respect a lot, and what he did, I can respect it. However, judging it as a book itself, nope, I don't like it. So basically, I also probably be good to recognise I also don't like 1984 by George Orwell, and I feel like this was a precursor to it. So this was kind of like it's the concepts behind it are very similar, and that's probably why I didn't like it. Even down to the weird fetishization of women in this book. Whenever he talks about women, he just talks about body parts, and it's just so creepy, and I not a fan of it. And so essentially, it's about this place where it takes place in the distant future. They are under the rule of the all-powerful benefactor, which they have to submit to the requirements of the state. And even dreams are not allowed. So if you start dreaming, then that means you're ill. The city is full of straight lines. There's no curves allowed. And the chief engineer, which is a man called D503, keeps a journal of basically all of his life. And everything is going fine for him until he meets a woman. It's very critical and it's very much the father of the modern dystopian genre. And I can respect it for that, but as a book on its own. Bouncing off the back of that, the next one that I read that I didn't like was The Monk by Matthew Gregory Lewis. Now, there was a couple of reasons why I picked up this book. One, because it's one of the earliest Gothic stories, and everybody knows how much I love Gothic stories. Next up, it was recommended by Walter Scott, who was a very famous Scottish poet. And three, in the BBC adaptation of Northanger Abbey, they read this book to take the piss out of it. So I thought, why not? Let us give this a go. What the fuck? This book is insane. So basically it's about this friar, Ambrosio, who kind of messes up his life because he becomes obsessed with his he becomes obsessed with this woman who actually ends up being his daughter, but it's not, it's his niece, cousin. Anyway, this book is full of incest, and it's quite horrifying, to be fair. I was just going in here expecting a wee Gothic tale about a monk, and I got incest, which I'm still reeling from this book, to be fair. It also has a lot of like mob violence, like the dangers of mob violence and murder, but the incest is what stuck out to me in this one. And it kind of is also a precursor to horror books, I would say, but in a more Gothic style. So, I mean, you can read it if you want, but I would not recommend this at all. Even if you're really into the Gothic genre, it's just maybe one that you just want to avoid if possible. Now, next up are two books that I read this year that I was very, very angry at. Emotionally, mentally, physically. First up was The Strings of Murder by Oscar de Muriel. Now, I picked up this book because I was in love with the premise. So, it's 1888. We're in Edinburgh. There's been an impossible murder of a violinist, virtuoso. In the middle of the night, nobody knows what's going on. So, they've got a Scottish detective on the case, and I was like, oh, this is brilliant. This is what I want in a Victorian murder mystery. The main character is an English guy who gets sent up to Scotland, to Edinburgh, to sort this out because the locals are just not smart enough to do it. That should have been my first indication that this was not going to go the way I thought it was. And then it was just a whole book full of why Scottish people are not clever, they're stupid, they're dirty, they're below this Englishman's feet. And he tries to do this kind of banter in the middle of it, which is just him being extremely rude to his Scottish detective partner, and this poor Scottish detective, if it was, I think on the whole the book itself was all right. It was the character of the Scottish detective guy was a very good character. I thought it was written well. It was just the incessant rudeness and derisiveness of the main character towards everybody else in the book, and he was just so rude and for no reason whatsoever. And also the Scots is awful, so that's they try to do Scots, forgetting that this is in Edinburgh and there's so many things that's you would never hear in Edinburgh. And I cannot, and then he smacked the back of my head. Yeah, so generally I feel like maybe this is a Scottish murder mystery for someone not in Scotland. For someone who doesn't live here, someone who has to deal with this for days on end. I really, really took against this one. And something evil in the back of my brain saying, read the sequel, maybe it won't be as bad. But I know it will be as bad because it was the problem with the main character that I had, and obviously the way that they wrote Scots. And that is why I really didn't like this one. So, last but not least, we have the book of the year that sent me into an apoplectic rage. So, last year I read a book called Dracula by Dacre Stoker, and I loved it. I thought it was brilliant. I was like, oh, this is great. Brilliant. I love it so much. I was really obsessed with it and absorbed by it. And then I saw that he'd written another one, a sequel, because the Dracula was a prequel to Dracula by Bram Stoker. So I saw he wrote a sequel, and I picked it up at a charity shop for £1. Was the worst mistake I made this year. Dracula The Undead by Dacre Stoker and Ian Holt. So, where to get started on this? It's just awful. So, basically, Quincy Harker, which is the son of Jonathan and Mina, leaves his studies for a lawyer, which annoys his parents, so that he can become an actor instead. When he's becoming an actor, he goes to the Lyceum, who is directed by Bram Stoker, and a production of Dracula, which he realises, oh wait, this is my parents, this is based on my parents' story. So he tries to dig further into it, and it kind of breaks down that kind of thing. And it transpires that Dracula's not actually evil at all. He's really nice and kind, and he just wants some love, and he is in love with Mina, which is shit, because that's not what the original book was about. Oh god, I'm gonna get angry again. Nope, can't do that. And the bad guy is actually Countess Elizabeth Bathory. And Jonathan was a bad person. Jonathan and Mina were bad for each other, which... This book is literally so annoying. Oh, and Van Helsing is an evil man who likes to murder innocent people. What else is there? Oh yeah, all the it's essentially, the way that I would describe it is, if you see any adaptation of Dracula which strayed so far from the book, and then somebody wrote a sequel to it instead of the actual Dracula itself. Because if you're reading Dracula, then this doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. Yep. Okay, that's me done talking about that. I'll probably talk about it more in a different video that I've got planned, but no, I'm not talking about that anymore because it just makes me so angry. Well, anyway, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Let me know down in the comments what your favourite or your least favourite books of 2021 were, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.